For a few brief weeks every season, the NBA stops feeling like a sports league and starts feeling like a pressure cooker. Wins and losses still matter. Box scores still pile up. But beneath the surface, something far more volatile is happening. Front offices are whispering. Agents are posturing. Players are glancing at their phones a little more often than usual. Fans refresh timelines like it's breaking news season. This is the modern NBA trade deadline, and somewhere along the way, we collectively forgot just how unhinged it has become. There was a time when the trade deadline was a footnote. A couple of mid-rotation veterans swapped places. Maybe a contender added a bench shooter, and that was that. You checked the transactions page once, shrugged, and moved on. That version of the league is gone, completely erased. What replaced it is something closer to organized chaos. A league-wide game of chicken where even the biggest names aren't safe and nothing feels off the table. Look back just one season, and it already sounds absurd. Luka Doncic changing teams mid-season. Jimmy Butler on the move. De'Aaron Fox uprooted. Brandon Ingram shifting conferences. These weren't rumors that fizzled out in July. These were seismic moves that detonated in the middle of the year, right when teams were supposed to be settling into their identities. The year before that felt quiet by comparison, but even then, it still involved meaningful rotation players like Buddy Hield and Gordon Hayward altering playoff paths. And then there was 2021, the year the dam truly broke, with 16 trades and 46 players changing uniforms in a single deadline window. That wasn't a fluke. It was a warning. Now here we are again, staring down another deadline that feels less like a checkpoint and more like a cliff edge. The stars are restless. The middle class is panicking. The rebuilding teams smell opportunity, and every single rumor feels just plausible enough to be dangerous. This is also the time of year when the league itself seems to exhale. The calendar turns, the All-Star break looms, and you can feel the energy dip ever so slightly on the court. Legs get heavy, focus drifts, games blur together. That's when fans start looking for something to latch onto, something to make a random Tuesday night in December feel like it matters. That's when the trade deadline steps in and hijacks the entire narrative. Because suddenly, every possession feels like an audition. Every bad loss sparks a think piece. Every quote is dissected for hidden meaning, and every team is forced to answer a question they've been avoiding since October. Is this actually working? Nowhere is that tension more obvious than in Milwaukee. Giannis Antetokounmpo, the most powerful force in the league both physically and politically, has mastered the art of saying everything without saying anything. His recent comments are a case study in plausible deniability. He talks about his agent like a separate entity, as if the man works in a different universe, having conversations Giannis himself can't control. It's the kind of deflection that sounds reasonable until you think about it for more than 5 seconds. This is Giannis. His agent doesn't sneeze without permission, and that's what makes it so maddening for Bucks fans. There's a passive-aggressive elegance to it. He doesn't demand a trade. He doesn't threaten. He just creates an atmosphere where everyone else has to make the uncomfortable decisions for him. He refuses to be the villain, even as the implication hangs in the air. Fix this, or I won't. The Bucks, to their credit, or perhaps their stubbornness, aren't blinking. Reports suggest they're positioning themselves as buyers, not sellers, determined to convince Giannis that help is coming. Rival executives are already whispering about Milwaukee hunting big game, about names like Zach LaVine and Jeremy Grant entering the conversation. The message is clear. If Giannis wants out, he's going to have to say it. No more subtext, no more proxy statements. Until then, the Bucks will push their chips to the center of the table and dare him to flinch. Whether that works or not, one thing is undeniable. This entire deadline runs through Milwaukee. Every move they make, every move they don't make, sends shockwaves through the rest of the league. And yet, as loud as the Giannis situation is, it might not even be the most dangerous storyline on the board. That distinction belongs to Anthony Davis, a player whose name alone can swing a title race. Yes, the injury concerns are real. They always are. But when Davis is on the floor, the impact is immediate and undeniable. Since his return, the Mavericks have looked like a different team, stacking wins against elite competition and suddenly playing defense with purpose. 32 points and 13 rebounds against Denver isn't just a good night. It's a reminder. Drop Anthony Davis into the Eastern Conference, and the balance of power shifts overnight. Teams that were cautiously optimistic become instant contenders. Teams that thought they had time suddenly feel exposed. ESPN has already floated suitors like Atlanta, Detroit, and Toronto, but it's impossible not to think bigger. Miami never stops hunting stars. Golden State is desperate to maximize whatever window Steph Curry has left. A two-way big like a D, even with the risk attached, might be the most logical gamble they could make. What complicates everything is the extension question. Any team trading for Davis has to believe not just in the short-term payoff, but in the idea that a deep playoff run can convince him to stay. That's a dangerous bet, but it's also the kind contenders are built on. For Dallas, the calculus is even more brutal. They have to decide whether committing to a D now is the right move to build around Cooper Flag long-term, or whether patience is the smarter play. Either way, standing still feels like the worst option, while those superstars dominate headlines. Atlanta is dealing with a crisis of a different kind, one that feels quieter but just as urgent. Trae Young is approaching a crossroads. Extension talks stalled. The Hawks made it clear they want a discount. Trae made it just as clear that at 27 years old, that's not a conversation he's interested in having. And then there's the most uncomfortable detail of all. The team has looked fine without him. In some stretches, better, especially defensively. The numbers are brutal. Trae returns, and suddenly the Hawks give up 152 points to the Bulls in regulation. No overtime, just a defensive collapse that reignites every criticism that's followed him for years. Unlike Ja Morant or LaMelo Ball, Trae doesn't have the luxury of time. He can hit free agency. If Atlanta lets that happen and loses him for nothing, it's a franchise-altering disaster. Complicating matters further is the Pelicans pick Atlanta controls. A pick that could land in the top 3. That's a ready-made replacement plan, staring them in the face. Everything about this situation screams trade, except the destination. Trae's market isn't massive. San Antonio once made sense, but they've cooled, preferring De'Aaron Fox. The Timberwolves need a point guard. The Rockets are flirting with relevance but falling apart in the clutch. The Kings are always lurking. Somewhere, there's a deal that makes too much sense not to happen. Then there's Golden State, a franchise teetering between eras, clinging to past glory while the present grows increasingly uncomfortable. Jonathan Kuminga was supposed to be part of the bridge to the future. For a brief moment, it looked like it might work. He started the season strong, flashed growth, hinted at evolution, and then everything collapsed. Now Kuminga barely exists in Steve Kerr's rotation. He either doesn't play or checks in for meaningless minutes, his body language screaming frustration. The low point came against Chicago on the second night of a back-to-back, with 4 major rotation players out. Kuminga received a DNP. It wasn't just puzzling, it was humiliating. Kerr clearly doesn't trust his decision-making, viewing his game as incompatible with Golden State's high-Q system. That relationship feels broken beyond repair. The Wizards, Pelicans, and Jazz all make sense as reclamation projects. But teams like the Kings and Suns have already sniffed around. Golden State may not want to admit it, but moving Kuminga might be the cleanest way to pivot without fully tearing everything down. Chicago, meanwhile, is quietly opening doors that were once shut. Reports indicate the Bulls are more open than ever to trading Coby White. His contract situation looms large, set to expire with unrestricted free agency on the horizon. At roughly $13 million, he's affordable. The production is there, at least on the surface. 21 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists per night through 11 games. The efficiency, however, is ugly. The defense is suspect. Still, clutch moments have a way of changing how players are valued. Houston feels like a natural landing spot. The Rockets are spiraling in close games, blowing massive leads, searching for composure. Dallas could also make sense, desperate for stability at the point guard position. Coby White isn't a savior, but in the right environment, he could be a solution. And then there's Domantas Sabonis, a player who somehow still feels underrated because of where he plays. 3-time All-Star, 2-time a hub of offensive gravity who makes everyone around him better. The flaws are well documented. Limited defense, a massive contract averaging $45 million, but he's 29, squarely in his prime. And offensive engines like this don't become available often.